Welcome to Science of Relevancy, show number 2. This is Rex Allen coming to you live from the Science of Relevancy studios near Boulder, Colorado. Hey, today we got an interesting topic. We got some interesting news that happened in the world of innovation and relevancy. 125-year-old brand Sears Corporation filed for bankruptcy today. Now, the bankruptcy filing was a Chapter 11, which is to buy them time to get through the holiday season. But the reality is it's over. They won't be able to come back from that. So let's talk about what happened at Sears and why they kind of missed the boat here and what happened and some of the epic issues that confronted them. Today it was quoted that it was a sad day, and it really is a sad day because I can remember growing up with Sears catalogs. And at one time, back in the day, you really think about Sears sold everything to everybody. You got the catalog when I was a kid, so I was born in 1965. You got that catalog, and there was everything in it. And I can even remember that my mother would give us the catalog, and she would say, put an X or put your name next to things you would be interested in out of the Sears catalog. And there was everything in there. I mean, everything you could think of. It was the paper version of Amazon today. And it was an amazing distribution tool. And so they really were the Amazon of their time. It was an interesting era for them. Sears made so doggone much money that at one time in the early 70s, they started construction on the world's tallest building for their corporate headquarters in downtown Chicago. For a long time, for actually over 25 years, the Sears Tower was the tallest building in the world. So think about that, how far the mighty have fallen. We've got an era where Sears was once the cat's meow, biggest retailer on the planet, dominant, sold everything to everybody, made so doggone much money that they could afford to build the world's largest building. And today, they filed for bankruptcy. So it's really an epic downfall. There was a quote today from Craig Johnson, president of Consumer Growth Partners, and he said, there are generations of people who grew up on Sears, and now it's not relevant. When you are in the retail business, it's all about newness, and Sears stopped innovating. Well, the reality is, it doesn't matter what business you're in, retail, or if you own a food company or a restaurant or a dog grooming service or a paint contracting company. It doesn't matter. If you're not relevant to your customer base, if you're not relevant and staying in the forefront of minds of your consumers and your tribe, whoever you are attracting information from and attention, you're just not going to make it in the digital age. So let's talk for a little bit about what happened to Sears. They had every advantage. So you really can't feel sorry for them. You really can't sit back and say, "Oh my goodness, poor Sears." Well, they really did not do a good job of staying current with the technology. So one of the first things they did is Sears was really late in coming to the game in e-commerce. With the giant Amazon out there today and Walmart and even Target doing a much better job of staying close to the younger generation. And what's happened, we are now have a generation that has grown up with, so current 18 to 20-year-olds, a generation that has grown up completely with the internet. And so Sears just ignored that trend. And they were late to the game. Their brand was stale doing that. They didn't do anything to innovate online sales, create a better customer experience, and so they were late to the game. Another thing that comes to mind that Sears made a serious mistake on is they had a stale brand. If you think about the brands that Sears had for the longest time, they didn't really appeal to the young up and coming generation who are now the millennials and buying. And so if you ask anybody who's about 25 to 35, when's the last time they've been into a Sears store, most of them would probably have to scratch their heads. And so Sears did not stay current with that generation. Now, they had great brands and still do, and they've sold a couple of them off. The Craftsman Tools, a fantastic brand, great tools, great quality. Everything there was quality, but it didn't appeal to a millennial generation and younger. How many of those people are working on their cars or building things or do-it-yourself type projects? So Sears didn't do a very good job and let companies like Home Depot and others come along who paid attention to those consumers and actually kind of morphed their brands like Ryobi or Black& Decker and others. Well, Sears did sell Craftsman tools to Black& Decker. So that was one. The Kenmore brand is on the block, which I think almost every other asset is on the block now from Sears. And the fact that they had a partnership also with Whirlpool that was over 95 years old, and that was recently ended. So Sears just didn't keep anything that was relevant. And then they were slow to bring in outside brands. So I can remember when shopping at Sears, everything as a kid, back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, that Sears only had Sears products. They didn't have Levi's and they didn't have American Eagle. They didn't have all these Wrangler and these other brands. So when you went to Sears, it just wasn't hip. It wasn't anything that was connecting to those other brands. Now, Sears was good at selling anything to anybody, but they weren't bringing those brands in their stores. So that was a critical mistake that they also made. Um, During this downfall, in the last 8 years, so Sears has not made a profit since 2010. Now, they went out to a hedge fund out there, and I will not name the CEO, but he wrote it all the way to the bottom, Mr. Lambert. But they brought in a hedge fund investors who really were not technologists, and they didn't understand innovation. So you got guys with lots of money, and Lambert, being a billionaire, brought in over hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. And the only way that Sears has stayed in existence for the last 8 years has been to do financial shuffling of the deck. So selling real estate assets, selling brands, taking capital infusion from the investment banking community, the hedge fund that was running them. But the biggest problem there is it's kind of a cultural thing. They didn't have leadership that really understood technology and really understood what the impacts of creating digital convenience and digital uh, technology to make the customer buying experience easy. Now, Sears tried a loyalty program about 2015, but it was a flop. It was too late in the game. And then another mistake that Sears made was they didn't right size their stores. And this, you're going to hear about me talk about this a lot on the show as we go forward and look at retail. No longer can retail institutions afford to have these huge monolithic stores with massive open aisles and those things. You've got to have small, if you're going to keep a brick and mortar, you're going to need to have smaller retail space. You need to going to have this as almost demo centers where people can come and touch and feel and try on for those who may not be fully into the buy it, try it on, and send it back model that Amazon's got. So they were just slow to the game to right size their stores. And I think you're going to have to see this trend take place for anyone in retail to make it in the next 20 years here, is they're going to have to resize and rethink that in-store experience that also integrates social media, integrates online ordering in the store, integrates free shipping, the whole shoot and match. So it really is a sad day for Sears. It's a sad day for America. But again, you don't cry for me, Argentina, like it comes from the famous movie. They had their chances. They were out in front. They were leaders in the marketplace. But this goes back to some of the things that we've seen in tech over the last 40 years. Whoever was the leader in the previous paradigm, so the market leader and the current or previous paradigm, never, and I mean almost never, ever makes it to be the leader in the next paradigm shift. And we're seeing that happen with Amazon. So it's a lot depth. We'll go into some deeper conversations about this, some financial woes that Sears got themselves into. But in the end, they just stopped innovating. In the end, they ignored being relevant. In the end, they weren't smart enough to be back to their roots to where they sold things that Sears did not produce. They were not quick enough to bring in other brands to maintain relevancy and leverage their marketing, and combined with these other mistakes, it really ended up to be an epic downfall. So you have to take a look at what's going on in the marketplace today. Relevancy is a science. And these types of companies here on the screen, the Walmarts, the Amazons, the Apples, the Googles, Netflix, you name it, these organizations really understand how to capture customer attention and remain relevant. But you're going to see some of these fall out. You're going to see some of these fall away. So tune in to me next time. There'll be a version coming up in Sears, version 2.0. And again, thanks for joining us, and always feel free to comment at the bottom of the pages. Tune into the podcast, and you can always go to our website for additional information about our services that we provide to help people stay relevant, because relevancy is really the key attribute to staying successful regardless of the type of organization you're in. Until next time, stay relevant.